Captain Zextel's mandibles clicked in anticipation as he studied the holographic display of the Earth cargo vessel. The ship's archaic design almost offended his sensibilities. Exposed hull plates, external cargo containers, and what appeared to be manually operated airlocks. It was the kind of vessel that belonged in a museum, not deep space. Tactical analysis complete, Captain, reported First Officer Vex, her compound eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of the command console. The vessel's designation is Solar Winds. Human crewed transport running supplies to their Mars colonies. Minimal defenses, no military escort, and... She paused, antennae twitching in amusement. They appear to be broadcasting their location on an open channel. Zextel's carapace rippled with barely contained mirth. 20 years of raiding vessels throughout the galactic arm had taught him to be cautious, but this was almost insulting. The humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago, and their technological development was still centuries behind the galactic standard. Life signs, he chittered, already mentally calculating how quickly they could strip the vessel and be on their way. 4 humans, Captain, all concentrated in the bridge section. Kvex's mandibles spread in the Vrachnid equivalent of a smirk. They appear to be making no attempt to evade or call for help. Something about that made Zextel's antennae twitch. In his experience, prey either ran or fought. This bold broadcasting of position was unusual. He pushed the thought aside. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for their bizarre behavior. Perhaps this was simply another example of their species' peculiarities. "Show me their cargo manifest," he ordered, his clawed appendage gesturing at the holographic display. The manifest appeared, scrolling with items that made his compound eyes widen. Medical supplies, rare earth metals, and several containers of what humans called coffee, a substance that had become extraordinarily valuable in certain sectors due to its unique effects on various alien physiologies. "Sir," interrupted the ship's sensor operator, "I'm detecting some odd power fluctuations throughout their vessel. Their distribution grid appears highly inefficient." Typical human engineering, Zextel dismissed. They still rely on physical switches and mechanical systems for half their operations. It's a wonder they made it to space at all. The bridge crew chittered in agreement. The Vrachnid Empire had long since moved beyond such primitive technology. Their neural interfaces and quantum lock systems were beyond anything humans could comprehend, let alone defend against. "Prepare the boarding party," Zextel commanded. "Standard formation. 6 raiders. Their atmospheric composition is within our tolerance range. No need for full environment suits, energy shields only." As his crew moved to comply, Zextel studied the cargo vessel once more. Its external cameras were obvious and unshielded, broadcasting their feed into space with no encryption. He could see into several windows, noting the apparently chaotic state of the interior. Cargo straps floated freely, storage containers seemed haphazardly secured, and loose papers drifted through the corridors. "Sloppy," he muttered. "Even for humans." The boarding party assembled in the airlock, their energy shields casting a soft purple glow over their chitinous armor. Each carried a standard plasma cutter, more than sufficient for any resistance 4 humans might offer. Their neural interfaces linked them together, sharing sensor data and tactical information in real time. "Captain," Kvex interrupted his thoughts, "the humans are maintaining their course and speed. They're either unaware of our presence or they're fools," Zextel finished. "Set course to intercept. Let's show these primitives why the Vrachnid Empire's pirates are feared across 3 spiral arms." As their ship moved into position, none of the bridge crew noticed the small mechanical sensor on the human vessel's hull. It contained no electronics, no power source, and no transmitter, just a simple spring mechanism that had just been triggered by their approach. Deep inside the solar winds, gears began to turn, and ropes began to move through pulleys. The game was about to begin. The Vracnid boarding umbilical extended toward the solar winds like a predatory tentacle, its smart metal surface adjusting to create a perfect seal with the human airlock. As it connected, a scratching sound reverberated through the hull, causing Second Officer Myrix to pause. Diagnostic scan shows green, she reported, though her antennae twitched uncertainly. But that sound. Primitive human equipment. Zextal dismissed. Their airlocks probably haven't been serviced since they left Earth orbit. The boarding party of 6 moved through the umbilical, their energy shields casting dancing purple shadows. Lieutenant Revol led the group, his sensor array probing the airlock for any signs of defense systems. The readings came back clear. No electronic locks, no security measures, not even basic motion sensors. Their internal atmosphere is stable, Revol reported through the neural link. Gravity at Earth standard. No signs of defensive countermeasures. He paused. Though there is an unusual amount of debris floating around. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing the dimly lit corridor. Paper documents drifted lazily through the air, along with what appeared to be maintenance tools and loose cargo straps. The walls were lined with exposed pipes and manual control valves, exactly the kind of industrial clutter one would expect on a human vessel. Spread out, standard search pattern, Revol ordered. Chris and Tizik, secure the engine room. Mupal and Vinnik, find their cargo manifest terminals. Salat, you're with me. We'll locate the bridge and deal with the crew. The pirates moved forward, their compound eyes easily adjusting to the low light. Their neural interfaces mapped the corridor in real time, creating a three-dimensional model of the ship's interior. Yet something felt off about the layout. Corridors that should have been straight seemed to curve slightly, and doorways appeared in locations that didn't match their scanned blueprints. Sir, Chris called over the neural link, we're detecting some anomalies in the structural layout. The ship's internal configuration doesn't match standard human cargo vessel designs. Probably jury-rigged repairs, Slat suggested. Humans are known for their creative maintenance solutions. They passed a section where cargo containers had been stacked seemingly at random, creating narrow passages between them. Tools lay scattered across the floor, wrenches, hammers, and what appeared to be manual cutting equipment. One of the containers was marked Kya Industrial Lubricantes in bold human script. Look at this mess, Vinnik chittered in amusement. They can't even secure their tools properly. No wonder humans haven't expanded beyond their home system. Revol's antennae suddenly stiffened. Wait, something's not right. These tools, they're arranged too. Before he could finish his thought, the sound of metal grinding against metal echoed through the corridor. The pirates froze, their neural interfaces scanning for the source. Nothing electronic registered on their sensors. The humans are still sealed in the bridge, Nupal reported. No movement detected. Then what was? Revol began, but stopped as he noticed something odd about the scattered papers drifting through the air. They weren't moving randomly. There was a pattern to their movement, as if being pushed by carefully directed air currents. A small metallic sphere rolled past their feet, making a soft ticking sound. Their sensors indicated it was completely mechanical. No power source, no electronics, just gears and springs. As they watched, it rolled to a stop against one of the cargo containers. What kind of primitive device is? Tizek started to ask, reaching down to examine it. That's when the first trap sprung. A simple tripwire, invisible against the cluttered floor, connected to a series of pulleys. The cargo container marked Industrial Lubricantes didn't just contain the lubricants, it was rigged to distribute them. The pirates' advanced sensors had been looking for energy signatures, electronic triggers, or digital systems. They weren't designed to detect simple machines. The last thought that went through Tizek's mind before the lubricant covered him and his companions was a realization. They had gravely misunderstood the meaning of primitive. Tizek's screech echoed through the corridor as he went down, his 6 legs splaying in different directions on the frictionless floor. The industrial lubricant was everywhere, coating their armored carapaces and rendering their usually precise movements into an uncoordinated mess. Their energy shields, designed to repel plasma and kinetic weapons, did nothing to prevent the liquid from seeping through. Status report. Revol demanded through the neural link, his own mandibles clicking in frustration as he tried to maintain his footing. Can't. Get up, Tizek responded, his attempts to rise only making things worse. The lubricant is. It's not normal. It's bonding to our exoskeletons. A cheerful human voice crackled through the ship's internal speakers. Oh, you've discovered our special blend. Like it? We mixed industrial lubricant with quick bonding polymer. The more you move, the more it sticks. The pirates froze, their compound eyes darting around for the source of the voice. Their neural interfaces registered no active communication systems in their vicinity. The sound seemed to be coming from ancient speakers mounted in the walls, completely analog technology. Impossible, Salat chittered, finally managing to brace himself against a wall. Our scans showed no crew outside the bridge. About those scans, the human voice continued, now seeming to come from a different section of the corridor. You might want to pay less attention to your fancy quantum sensors and more attention to, I don't know, your eyes. That's when they noticed the cargo straps, dozens of them, hanging innocuously from the ceiling. They weren't floating randomly as they'd first appeared. They were arranged in a pattern, and they were slowly descending. Evasive maneuvers, Revol ordered, but it was too late. The lubricant had done its job perfectly. As they struggled to move, the straps dropped down, their ends weighted with small mechanical devices that caused them to swing and wrap around the pirates' limbs. The more they struggled, the tighter the straps became, pulled by a cunning system of counterweights and pulleys. Chris managed to activate his plasma cutter, aiming it at one of the straps. The beam hit and reflected. The pirates watched in horror as the energy dispersed harmlessly across the strap's surface. Heat-resistant coating, the human voice explained cheerfully. We use it on our heat shields for atmospheric re-entry. Neat, ha. Vanek, the team's technical specialist, was frantically analyzing the traps through his neural interface. Captain, these mechanisms, they're completely mechanical. No electronics, no power signatures, just springs, pulleys, counterweights, and a series of metallic clicks interrupted him. Above them, previously hidden panels in the ceiling began to open. Simple hinge doors operated by the weight of the captured pirates pulling on the cargo straps. You might want to close your eyes, the human voice suggested helpfully. None of them did. Fracnid pride wouldn't allow it. That was their second mistake. The panels released their contents, thousands of small, reflective pieces of material, simple mirror shards and metallic confetti, combined with the suddenly brightening corridor lights. Again, completely analog technology. The effect was dazzling. Their compound eyes, superior in low light, but vulnerable to sudden brightness, were overwhelmed. My visual processors, Slat screeched. They're overloaded. Fun fact about compound eyes, the human voice mused. They're great for detecting movement and seeing in the dark, but they really don't handle bright, reflective surfaces well, especially not when there are thousands of them spinning in zero gravity. Through the neural link, Revol could feel his team's mounting panic. Their superior technology, their advanced sensors, their neural interfaces, none of it had prepared them for this. They had come expecting to find primitive creatures with primitive defenses. Instead, they were being systematically neutralized by the very primitiveness they had dismissed. Oh, and one more thing, the human voice added, now sounding like it was coming from directly beside them, though their sensors detected nothing. We're just getting started. A new sound filled the corridor. The mechanical whirring of gears and the clink of chain drives being set in motion. The floor beneath them began to move. Phase 2 was about to begin. The floor's movement sent the lubricant-covered, strap-entangled pirates sliding in different directions. Their neural network, normally a seamless web of shared tactical data, became a chorus of confused signals as the team was forcibly separated. The corridor had transformed into a series of moving walkways, each section operating independently through an intricate system of manual cranks and gears. "Maintain formation," Revel commanded, but it was a futile order. The floor panels were rotating, creating a constantly shifting maze that herded them into different sections of the ship. Their advanced mapping systems became useless as the internal layout refused to remain static. Chris found himself pulled into what appeared to be a maintenance shaft. His sensors detected no power signatures, no electronic locks, nothing that suggested danger. Then he heard it, a low rumbling sound coming from above. Looking up, his compound eyes widened at the sight of a massive hopper filled with what appeared to be garbage. He chittered in disbelief, moments before the avalanche hit. The human voice returned, now echoing from somewhere behind the walls. "Today's menu features 3-week-old freeze-dried food packets, used coffee grounds, and a special garnish of packing peanuts. Bon appetit." Meanwhile, Vinek had been channeled into what seemed to be a dead end. His neural interface detected a hollow space behind the wall, and he confidently activated his plasma cutter. "Primitive humans," he muttered. They didn't even shield their structural walls. The wall panel fell away easily, too easily. Behind it was another panel, and another, and another. Each one was made of progressively different materials. Aluminum, then ceramic, then composite, then aerogel. Each required a different cutting frequency, forcing him to constantly readjust his weapon. "Having fun?" the human voice asked. "We call that the layer cake. Don't worry, you've only got about 30 more walls to go. Hope your power cell lasts." Slat, still partially blinded by the reflective attack, stumbled into a cargo bay. His sensors detected movement above. Hundreds of small objects suspended from the ceiling. Through his impaired vision, he could make out their shapes, simple pendulums, each weighted differently, swinging in complex patterns. Warning, his neural interface suddenly blared. Impact imminent. He tried to dodge, but the lubricant still coating his exoskeleton made movement unpredictable. The first pendulum, a simple steel ball on a rope, caught him in the thorax. It wasn't moving fast enough to cause damage, but its momentum was calculated perfectly to push him into the path of another and another, creating a chain reaction of impacts that kept him off balance. Tizek and Mipal found themselves in what had once been the ship's galley. Every surface was covered with small wind-up toys, primitive mechanical devices that created a cacophony of motion signatures. Their sensors were overwhelmed, unable to distinguish potential threats from the mechanical noise. "My father collected these," the human voice commented conversationally. "Amazing how much havoc a few hundred chattering teeth and hopping frogs can wreak on advanced motion tracking systems, isn't it?" Rivel, separated from his team, faced perhaps the most insidious trap of all. He had been maneuvered into a circular chamber where every surface was covered with analog screens, simple liquid crystal displays showing camera feeds from throughout the ship. He was forced to watch as his elite boarding party was systematically humiliated by technology that predated spaceflight. "We're broadcasting this on all frequencies. By the way," the human voice informed him cheerfully. "Your ship's receiving the feed too. Wave to your crew. They're getting quite an education in human ingenuity." A mechanical clicking sound drew Rivel's attention to a small device mounted on the wall. It was a simple counter, the kind humans used in sporting events. It read, "Traps triggered. 4. And then, as he watched, clicked over to 5. The counter was connected to a length of string. The string led to a pulley. The pulley led to... Rivel looked up just in time to see the ceiling open. "Tell me," the human voice asked, "have you ever wondered what happens to magnetic ball bearings in zero gravity when you introduce a spinning magnetic field?" "No." "Well, you're about to find out." The lesson was about to become very hands-on. The magnetic ball bearings danced around Rivel in a mesmerizing pattern, creating a spherical cage of constant motion. Any attempt to move resulted in dozens of impacts from multiple directions. His neural interface was registering hundreds of possible escape trajectories, but each calculation became instantly obsolete as the magnetic field shifted unpredictably. Then the laughter started. At first it was just a child's giggle, echoing from somewhere in the walls. Then another joined in, and another. Soon the entire chamber filled with the sound of human children's mirth, playing through hidden mechanical gramophones strategically placed throughout the ship. "What kind of psychological warfare is this?" Prevail demanded, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Oh, that," the now familiar human voice responded. "Just some recordings from my daughter's birthday party. She thought it would be funny to include them. Kids, you know." Through the neural link, Prevail received fragmented distress calls from his team. Chris had managed to dig himself out of the garbage avalanche only to discover that the maintenance shaft had become pressurized with an astounding amount of glitter, tiny reflective particles that stuck to his lubricant-coated carapace like a second skin. I can't get it off," Chris reported, his usual military precision cracking. "It's everywhere. The humans have weaponized decorative materials." Vinnick had finally cut through all the wall layers only to find himself in a chamber filled with hundreds of small pendulums, each holding a piece of chalk. As they swung in complex patterns, they drew crude caricatures of the pirates on the walls. Somehow, they were depicting the team's current predicaments in real time. Artistic criticism from mechanical devices, Vinnick chittered in disbelief. "The humans are mocking us with physics." The temperature began to drop noticeably. Through the camera feeds, Prevail watched as sections of the ship systematically vented atmosphere, creating currents that herded his scattered team like cattle. The humans were conducting a symphony of atmospheric pressure, using nothing more complex than manual valve controls. Slat's voice crackled through the neural link, higher pitched than usual. "Captain, I'm detecting movement behind the walls." Mechanical sounds, but they're mimicking Vracnid distress calls. Indeed, the humans had rigged an elaborate system of tubes and air whistles that reproduced the exact frequencies of Vracnid communication. The effect was deeply unsettling. Their own biological language turned against them through purely mechanical means. Nupal, trying to escape the wind currents, backed into what seemed to be a safe corner. The wall behind him suddenly became sticky, some kind of pressure-activated adhesive. As he struggled, a small mechanical arm descended from the ceiling, holding an ancient human camera device. "Say cheese," the human voice chimed as the camera's flashbulb popped. "Don't worry, we're making a scrapbook. We'll send copies to all your relatives." Tzek had perhaps the most surreal experience. He'd found himself in a chamber where dozens of small mechanical projectors created a crude animation on the walls using nothing but rotating discs and light. The animation showed a simplified version of their boarding attempt, complete with exaggerated failures and comic mishaps. It was already depicting events that had happened just minutes ago. "How?" Tzek's voice trembled across the neural link. "How did they prepare this in advance?" "Oh, we didn't," the human voice replied cheerfully. "That's just a basic template. The mechanisms adjust based on what actually happens. Simple mechanical computation. You know, the kind you thought was primitive." The sound of gears grinding filled the ship again, but this time it was different. This time it sounded like laughter, deep, mechanical, rhythmic laughter that resonated through the hull itself. The humans had somehow turned the entire vessel into a gigantic music box of mockery. Prevail, still trapped in his magnetic prison, watched as the counter on the wall clipped again. Traps triggered. 13. Below it, a new message began printing from a mechanical ticker tape machine. Intermission ending. ACT2 Please remain seated. The grinding laughter grew louder, and somewhere in the distance, a calliope began to play. The calliope's carnival music echoed through the solar wind's corridors, its cheerful melody a stark contrast to the increasingly desperate situation of the Vrachnid pirates. Through the neural link, Revol could feel his team's collective composure crumbling. Their shared consciousness, once a web of tactical precision, had devolved into a chaos of panic, confusion, and wounded pride. "Status report," he commanded, still batting away magnetic bearings. "Everyone, report in sequence." The responses came in fragments. "I've lost my plasma cutter," Chris transmitted. It's been stolen by some kind of mechanical arm that keeps playing keep away with me around corners." The drawings. Vinek's thoughts were frantic. The drawings on the walls. They're not just showing what happened. They're showing what's about to happen. But that's impossible with purely mechanical. His transmission cut off abruptly, followed by a splash and a screech. Through the camera feeds, Revol watched as his technical specialist emerged from behind a false panel, now covered in what appeared to be quick-drying children's craft paste and feathers. "Did I mention my daughter's entire kindergarten class contributed to our defense system?" The human voice chimed in. They had some very creative suggestions. Slat's signal was next, his usual stoic demeanor shattered. "The maintenance tunnels. They're like a maze, but the walls keep moving. Not electronically. They're on tracks with counterweights. I've tried mapping them, but the configurations seem endless." An industrial klaxon suddenly blared. Not electronic, but a massive mechanical horn powered by compressed air. The sound pattern was familiar, too familiar. "Is that?" Mimpal's thoughts radiated disbelief. "Is that the Vrachnid Imperial surrender signal?" "Oh, you recognized it." The human voice seemed delighted. "We studied your historical naval warfare protocols. Fascinating stuff. Did you know this specific pattern was used in the Battle of Proxima Centauri? Your ancestors had quite sophisticated acoustic signaling systems." Tizek, who had been quiet for several minutes, suddenly screamed across the neural link. He had found himself in what appeared to be a dead end, face to face with a mechanical puppet. It was crude by Vrachnid standards, but its movements eerily mimicked their species' body language. It was performing the Vrachnid gesture of ultimate mockery. A complex series of mandible clicks and antenna waves that roughly translated to even a hatchling would have seen this coming. "That's culturally accurate," Tizek transmitted weakly. "How do they know our ancestral insult gestures?" "We did our homework," the human voice explained. "Anthropology is a fascinating field. Or would it be Vrachnidology in this case? We'll have to ask the linguistics department." Revol watched helplessly as his elite boarding party, pride of the Vrachnid pirate fleet, was systematically reduced to a stumbling, lubricant-covered, glitter-encrusted, thoroughly demoralized mess. Their advanced technology, rendered useless by simple machines, their tactical superiority, undone by pulleys and springs, their fearsome reputation, transformed into a comedy show being broadcast across space. The ticker-tape machine in his chamber spat out a new message. QRENTVYEBVER K-Wunt 247,893 and rising. Trending on galactic social media. Hashtag Vrachnid fails. Hashtag Human Sarah Weird. Hashtag Oneeds Technology. You know what the best part is. The human voice had taken on an almost conspiratorial tone. "This isn't even our actual cargo ship. This is our training vessel. We use it to test new trap designs and train security teams. You basically volunteered for our experimental program." A new sound filled the ship, the clicking of hundreds of mechanical cameras. Every humiliating moment was being captured from multiple angles, preserved for what would undoubtedly become training material across human space. Through the neural link, Revol felt the exact moment his team's collective will broke. It wasn't the traps, the humiliation, or even the broadcasting of their failures. It was the realization that everything they'd experienced had been achieved without a single advanced piece of technology. Every trap, Every trick, every psychological ploy had been implemented using principles that predated spaceflight. The humans hadn't just beaten them. They had done it in the most primitive way possible, and that made it infinitely worse. The counter clicked again. Traps triggered. 20. Below it, a new message began printing. Final ACT beginning. Please keep your appendages inside DE-RID-8 ALL times. The Vracnid boarding party's neural link erupted with a unified surge of panic as hundreds of small objects began launching from hidden ports throughout the ship. Each projectile was about the size of a human fist, trailing thin metal cables behind them. Magnetics. Vinik screeched across the link. They're attaching to our ship's hull. Through the external camera feeds, Rivel watched in horror as the devices latched onto their vessel's pristine surface. Each impact point sprouted mechanical legs that began walking the devices across the hull in perfect synchronization. They were forming patterns, massive, ship-spanning letters visible from any approaching vessel. Let me give you a preview of what your ship now says, the human voice offered helpfully. Come see the amazing self-DFEAT pirates. Live shows AHOURO. Kids get in free. Chris, finally free of the glitter trap, made a desperate break for what his sensors indicated was an access point back to their boarding umbilical. Instead, he found himself in what appeared to be a crude lecture hall. Mechanical projectors whirred to life, displaying slides titled Common Mistakes in Space Piracy, A Human Perspective. We'll be publishing a peer-reviewed paper about this encounter, the voice explained. Your contribution to human defensive research will be properly credited, of course. The galactic scientific community takes academic integrity very seriously. Salat had managed to reach their ship's communication frequency. Captain Zextal. We need immediate extraction. Send a rescue team. Oh, about that, the human voice interrupted. Your captain's been quite entertained. We've been feeding him the live feed this whole time. Would you like to hear his response? A new voice crackled through their neural link. Zextal himself, barely containing his mixture of rage and embarrassment. You incompetent larva. You're being defeated by Puliles. Strings. Mechanical toys. The entire sector is watching this. Tizek, in a last-ditch effort to salvage their dignity, attempted to hack into the ship's systems. His neural interface searched desperately for any electronic vulnerability, any digital weakness to exploit. Instead, he found a mechanical punch card reader that began printing out his attempted hack commands on paper tickets. Step right up, boomed the human voice through a massive phonograph horn. Get your commemorative I tried to hack a mechanical system tickets. Perfect souvenirs for the whole family. Nupal, covered in what appeared to be a mixture of paint, feathers, and engineering lubricant, finally snapped. These humans, they're not primitive. They're insane. They turned their technological disadvantage into a weapon. A series of small doors opened in the walls around them, revealing rows of glass cases. Inside each case was a mechanical clock, their gears visible and turning in perfect synchronization. But instead of telling time, they were counting down. Ah, noticed our timing system, have you? The human voice was practically gleeful. Fun fact, every trap you've encountered was mechanically timed. Each one wound up the next, like a ship-sized Rube Goldberg machine. Would you like to know what these particular timers are counting down to? The pirates watched in unified dread as each clock ticked closer to zero. Their neural interfaces, processing probability scenarios at lightning speed, could only generate one conclusion. Whatever came next would be exponentially worse than everything they'd encountered so far. Now, the voice continued, you have exactly 3 minutes to make a choice. Behind door number 1 is a clear path back to your ship. Simple, straightforward. No tricks. Behind door number 2 is, well, let's just say we've saved our most creative traps for the final. Your choice entirely. The clock faces began to glow with phosphorescent paint. Oh, and one more thing, the voice added. We're taking votes from our live audience. Currently trending. Make them take door number 2. The galaxy seems very invested in your decision. Rival, still suspended in his magnetic-bearing prison, watched as the counter clicked one final time. Traps triggered. 42. FINALE preparation complete. A new message rolled out of the ticker-tape machine. Choose wisely. Door 2 includes a free t-shirt. The clocks continued their countdown, their mechanical ticking mixing with the carnival music to create a symphony of impending doom. The pirates had never faced a more difficult decision in their careers. They weren't proud of it. They weren't happy about it. But after everything they'd experienced, the promise of a clear escape route overrode both their curiosity about door number 2 and the galaxy's overwhelming vote for more entertainment. Disappointing but predictable, the human voice sighed as they scrambled toward their boarding umbilical. The audience will just have to settle for the highlight reel. The retreat was almost anticlimactic. No final traps. No last-minute surprises. Just 6 thoroughly humiliated Vrachnid pirates dragging themselves back to their ship, trailing glitter, lubricant, and the shattered remains of their reputation behind them. Then they reached their boarding umbilical. "Oh, right," the human voice chimed in. "We might have made some minor modifications while you were enjoying our hospitality." The umbilical's interior had been transformed into a gift shop. Rows of mechanical vendors lined the walls, each featuring merchandise commemorating their failed raid. T-shirts with "I survived the solar winds experience" printed on them. Snow globes containing miniature recreations of their most embarrassing moments. Action figures that, when wound up, performed perfect reenactments of their various mishaps. Don't forget to grab your complimentary gift bags. The voice encouraged. Each one contains a DVD of your performance, a certificate of participation, and a voucher for 20% off your next visit. Terms and conditions apply. As they finally reached their ship, Captain Zextal was waiting for them. His mandibles were clicking in a pattern that conveyed utter disappointment. "The broadcast has reached the Imperial Court," he informed them grimly. "The Emperor himself sent a message. He wants copies of the gift shop merchandise." That's when they realized they couldn't detach from the solar winds. Their advanced boarding umbilical, a marvel of Vrachnid engineering, had been mechanically locked in place. "About your docking equipment," the human voice spoke again, now coming through their own ship's communication system. "We're keeping it. Consider it a donation to our ongoing research into defensive technologies. But don't worry, we'll put it to good use in our new exhibit, How Not to Board a Human Vessel." The only way to escape was to disconnect the umbilical entirely, leaving it attached to the solar winds like a trophy. As they prepared to abandon their equipment, the human ship's external lights illuminated, revealing the true extent of the mechanical devices covering its hull. Hundreds of small automatons were still arranging themselves, now spelling out, "TAKNKS F4 PLA Wang. Come back soon." "Before you go," the human voice said, "I should introduce myself. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Professor of Applied Defense Mechanics at the Terran Space Academy. Thanks to your participation, my students have some excellent practical data for their theses on low-technology defensive systems." The pirates watched in stunned silence as a final message unfurled across the solar wind's hull. "Spioneso Red by Earth's Department of Education. Making learning fun. Oh, and one last thing," Dr. Chen added. "Door number 2. It just led to our actual cargo hold. Empty, of course. This is a training vessel after all. But we did have those free t-shirts ready. Your size and everything." As the Vrachnid ship finally broke away, they received one last transmission, a formal-looking document being printed directly onto their bridge's ancient backup paper console. "CERTIFIKAT of Calendapilation. This acknowledges that the Vrachnid boarding party has successfully completed the Solar Wind's advanced course in human ingenuity and mechanical defense systems. Final grade: A+ for enthusiasm, C for performance. Special notes: shows room for improvement in trap recognition and mechanical appreciation. Recommended follow-up course: Introduction to Pulleys and Levers. Why the Simple Things Matter. The document was signed with a mechanical stamp that left a perfect impression of a smiling human face. The pirates never raided another human vessel. In fact, they became renowned lecturers across the galaxy, teaching other species one simple but crucial lesson. Sometimes, the most dangerous technology is no technology at all. And somewhere in human space, a training vessel called Solar Winds continued its educational mission, waiting for the next group of overconfident visitors to learn that same valuable lesson.